Imagine getting stopped by the Coast Guard and discovering that something you've had on your boat for years is suddenly the reason you're being fined. Most boat owners think they're following the law until an inspection, a state marine patrol stop, or an unexpected encounter with a park ranger proves otherwise. Some of the most common things people keep on board could earn you a warning, a serious fine, or a genuinely bad day on the water. Today, we're looking at 10 items that can become illegal, restricted, or a real problem to have aboard your boat in 2026. One thing before we start. Boating law is a patchwork of federal rules, state rules, and sometimes local waterway rules, all layered on top of each other. Nothing here replaces checking the specific regulations for the waters and states where you're actually cruising, especially if you're doing something like the Great Loop and crossing a dozen jurisdictions in a single season. Think of this as a list of categories worth double-checking, not a complete legal guide. Let's get into it. Number 10. Illegal fireworks. Plenty of boaters keep a stash of fireworks aboard for a 4th of July celebration at anchor or a fun evening with friends, and this is one of the more straightforward items on today's list, right up until you cross a state line. Fireworks possession and use are regulated at the state level and sometimes at the city or county level too. And those regulations don't stop applying just because you're floating on a boat instead of standing on land. Some states prohibit consumer fireworks entirely. Others allow certain types, while restricting louder or aerial varieties. And many marinas and waterways have their own rules about discharging fireworks near residential shorelines, protected wildlife areas, or other boats. Fireworks that were perfectly legal where you bought them can put you in violation the moment you cross into a state that restricts or bans them. It's worth being clear about something here too. Approved emergency marine flares, the kind required for visual distress signaling, are a completely separate legal category from recreational fireworks. One is safety equipment regulated by the Coast Guard. The other is a consumer product regulated by the state you're in. Assuming your emergency flares somehow cover you for a fireworks show, or that a fireworks display counts as an emergency signal, is a mix-up worth avoiding entirely. If you're planning to bring fireworks along for a specific celebration during an extended cruise, check the fireworks laws for every state or waterway you'll actually be in when you plan to use them, not just the state where you bought them. Our next item is one where the problem isn't owning the equipment. It's what you're relying on that equipment to do. Number 9. Expired or improperly stored marine pyrotechnics. Almost every boater has a small, orange box of flares tucked into a locker somewhere, and this is genuinely one of the most common compliance gaps out there, even among boaters who consider themselves careful. To be clear up front, it's not illegal to own expired flares. Plenty of boaters keep old ones around as backup, and that's fine. The legal issue is using expired flares to satisfy your required visual distress signal carriage requirement, or relying on them during a Coast Guard inspection as if they still count. Pyrotechnic flares expire 42 months after their date of manufacture, roughly every 3 boating seasons, and once that date passes, they no longer meet the requirement even if they'd probably still function. The other piece of this that catches people off guard is disposal. Expired flares are classified as hazardous material, not regular trash, and improperly disposing of them, tossing them in a dumpster or leaving them in a marina waste bin can itself violate hazardous waste handling rules, depending on your location. Many boaters are choosing Coast Guard-approved electronic visual distress signaling devices because they don't expire the way pyrotechnic flares do. Whether they're an option for your boat depends on the specific carriage requirements that apply to you, so always confirm what satisfies the rules before removing your traditional flares. The habit worth building is simple. Check the stamped expiration date every spring. And if you do have expired flares aboard, keep them clearly separated from your current compliant set so there's no confusion about which ones actually satisfy the law. 2 down, 8 to go. And honestly, the ones coming up are the ones that surprise even experienced boaters. If you're finding this useful, go ahead and hit like, subscribe to Boat Hunter, and turn on notifications, because we're about to get into the item that catches out more Great Loop cruisers than almost anything else on this list. Number 8. Illegal marine sanitation device setups. Every boat with a head needs a way to handle waste, and this is one area where the legality depends entirely on your location rather than the equipment itself, which trips up more boaters than almost anything else on this list. Under federal law, Boats operating in a designated no-discharge zone cannot release treated or untreated sewage overboard, full stop. Many inland lakes, rivers, and stretches of coastal water, including large portions of the Great Loop Route, are designated no-discharge zones. In those waters, even a Coast Guard-approved marine sanitation device that treats waste before releasing it isn't enough. You need a holding tank, and you need to actually use it, pumping out at a designated station rather than discharging offshore. Here's where it gets tricky for buyers of older boats specifically. Plenty of older vessels have a Y valve that allows switching between a holding tank and direct overboard discharge, often installed decades ago under different rules. That valve itself isn't automatically illegal to have, but it needs to be secured in the closed position, sometimes with a wire tie or padlock, whenever you're in a no-discharge zone. Owners who buy an older boat and never think to check how the previous owner had that valve configured can end up unknowingly discharging illegally the first time they empty a full holding tank. Before heading into unfamiliar waters, it's worth confirming whether you're entering a no-discharge zone and physically checking how your Y valve, if you have one, is actually set. Our next item touches on federal law in a way that surprises a lot of boaters who assume state law is the only thing that matters. Number 7. Marijuana and controlled substances in federal waters. This is a genuinely confusing area for a lot of boaters, and it deserves a careful, non-alarmist explanation rather than a scare tactic. Marijuana is legal for recreational or medical use in a growing number of states, but it remains illegal under federal law. Navigable waters, certain federal facilities, and areas like national parks or wildlife refuges often fall under federal jurisdiction regardless of what the surrounding state allows. That means a boater who is completely within their rights under state law while docked at a marina could technically be in a different legal situation the moment they're operating on waters where federal law is what actually applies. This is genuinely one of the more nuanced areas of boating law, and the practical enforcement reality varies a great deal depending on where you are and what agency you encounter. The safest general approach, without getting into specific legal advice, is understanding that state legalization doesn't automatically extend to every body of water you might cruise through, particularly if your trip takes you through federal land, national park waters, or areas with a heavier federal law enforcement presence. If this is a genuine concern for your specific trip, it's worth a conversation with someone who actually practices in this area of law, rather than relying on a general rule of thumb, since the details can shift significantly based on exactly where you are. We're halfway through the list, and I'd genuinely love to know how many of these you already knew about before hitting play. Drop a comment and let me know which one on this list surprised you the most so far, and it helps me know what to dig into for future videos. Our next item shifts from human law to wildlife law, and it catches a lot of well-meaning boaters off guard. Number 6. Protected wildlife or illegal catch. Most boaters who end up in trouble here didn't mean any harm. They picked up something interesting off a beach, kept a fish that looked fine, or didn't realize what they were looking at counted as protected. Federal and state law protects a wide range of marine wildlife, and the specifics vary enormously depending on species and location. Undersized or out-of-season fish, protected species like certain sea turtles, and specific coral species are commonly regulated, and possessing them, even unintentionally, can result in real fines. Sea turtle shells and certain coral, even ones that wash up naturally rather than being actively harvested, can fall under protection, depending on the species and the state. Fishing regulations in particular vary constantly by state, by season, and sometimes by the specific body of water, which makes this a genuinely easy category to get wrong without meaning to. A fish that's legal to keep in one state's waters might be protected or undersized just a few miles away across a state line. The practical habit worth building is checking current size, season, and species restrictions for wherever you're actually fishing, not relying on what you remember from a previous trip or a different state, and being cautious about picking up interesting-looking shells or marine debris without knowing what they actually are. Our next item is one we've touched on before, and it remains one of the most commonly violated rules for anyone cruising long distances. Number 5. Invasive species and illegal live bait. If you fish while cruising, particularly across multiple states, this deserves real attention. Many states prohibit transporting live bait, certain baitfish species, or aquatic organisms like zebra mussels and hydrilla across state lines or between different bodies of water, specifically to prevent invasive species from spreading into new ecosystems. These invasive species have caused enormous ecological and economic damage after being unintentionally transported on boats, trailers, or in bait buckets, and states have responded with genuinely strict transport laws that carry real fines. For Great Loop cruisers specifically, this matters more than it would for someone boating on a single lake their whole life. Moving through multiple states and connected water systems means live wells, bait buckets, and even bilge water can become a vector for invasive species if you're not careful about draining and cleaning between different bodies of water. Some states require boaters to drain live wells and bilges before launching or crossing into their waters. The safest habit on a long trip is simple. Don't transport live bait across state lines unless you've specifically confirmed it's allowed. Drain your live well and bilge between different water systems and rinse your hull if you've been in water known to have invasive species present. If this list has been useful so far, this is a good moment to like the video, subscribe to Boat Hunter, and turn on notifications, because the next 4 items get considerably more serious, starting with one that requires genuinely careful research before any long trip. Number 4. Firearms transport across jurisdictions. Owning a firearm and keeping one aboard your boat isn't universally illegal, but this is genuinely one of the most jurisdiction-dependent items on today's entire list, and I want to be direct about that rather than oversimplifying it. Firearm laws vary enormously by state, and in some cases by city, covering everything from magazine capacity limits to registration requirements to which specific firearms are permitted at all. A firearm and magazine configuration that's completely legal in one state can be a serious violation the moment you cross into a state or city with different rules. And "I was just passing through on my boat" is not a defense that reliably protects you. This becomes a genuinely significant concern for anyone doing an extended trip like the Great Loop, which can cross 10 or more states with meaningfully different firearm laws. I'm not going to attempt to summarize specific state-by-state firearm regulations here, because those details change, they're genuinely complex, and getting them wrong in a general video could give someone false confidence in a situation with serious legal consequences. What I can say clearly is this: if you're planning to keep a firearm aboard for an extended, multi-state trip, treat it as a research project before you leave the dock, not something you figure out as you go. Look into the specific laws for every state on your planned route, and when in doubt, talk to someone who actually practices firearms law rather than relying on general boating advice. Our next item involves safety equipment that's supposed to save your life, and a growing problem with counterfeit versions that don't. Number 3. Counterfeit or non-compliant distress signals. We talked earlier about flares that have simply expired, but there's a separate and arguably more serious problem showing up online: counterfeit and non-approved emergency signaling devices being sold to boaters who have no idea they're not getting the real thing. The problem isn't simply owning one. The problem begins when a counterfeit or non-approved device is carried in place of equipment required by law, or relied upon during an inspection as though it actually meets Coast Guard standards. Genuine Coast Guard-approved emergency devices, whether that's traditional flares, electronic visual distress signals, or EPIRBs, go through real testing and certification. Counterfeit versions, sometimes sold through third-party online marketplaces at suspiciously low prices, may look nearly identical in photos but haven't gone through that certification process, and there's no reliable guarantee they'll actually function correctly in an emergency. Relying on one of these devices to meet your legal visual distress signal requirement means you may not actually be compliant, even though you genuinely believe you are, and far more importantly, it means your emergency equipment might not work when your life actually depends on it. This is a newer and growing problem specifically because online marketplaces make it easy for counterfeit safety equipment to reach consumers who have no easy way to verify authenticity before purchase. The safest approach is buying safety equipment, especially anything related to distress signaling, from established marine retailers rather than the cheapest listing you can find online, and checking that any device you own carries genuine, verifiable Coast Guard approval markings rather than just packaging that looks official. Our next item moves from equipment that doesn't work properly to waste that shouldn't be handled carelessly at all. Number 2. Illegal disposal of hazardous waste. Every boat accumulates some combination of used oil, old batteries, cleaning chemicals, and other materials that count as hazardous waste. None of that is illegal to have aboard. What matters is how you store it, and especially how you get rid of it. Improperly storing hazardous waste aboard, whether that's used oil in an unmarked or leaking container, old batteries stored without containment, or cleaning chemicals mixed together in ways that create genuine safety risks, can create real problems even before anything gets discharged into the water. And discharging that material, whether intentionally or through an unmonitored bilge pump, brings serious Clean Water Act concerns. It's illegal to discharge oil or oily waste into navigable waters if it creates a visible sheen, and boaters are required to report any sheen-producing discharge to the Coast Guard's National Response Center. The practical habits that keep boaters compliant here are straightforward. Store used oil and old batteries in proper, sealed containers rather than whatever happens to be handy. Dispose of them at a marina or facility equipped to handle hazardous waste rather than regular trash. And keep an eye on what your bilge pump is actually discharging, particularly if it's set to run automatically while you're away from the boat. That brings us to the item most boaters have genuinely never thought about, and it might be the most surprising one on today's entire list. And unlike the other items on this list, this one catches people because they honestly believe they're doing nothing wrong. Number 1. Protected marine artifacts and historic finds. Most boaters assume that if they find something interesting underwater, on a beach, or near a shipwreck, it's theirs. That assumption is often wrong, and the law here catches people completely off guard. Historic shipwrecks, archaeological sites, and certain artifacts found in protected waters are covered by federal laws like the Abandoned Shipwreck Act, along with various state historical preservation laws, and sometimes protections tied to specific national marine sanctuaries or park boundaries. Recovering coins, tools, ship fittings, or other historical items from a wreck site without proper authorization can be a real legal violation, regardless of how long the wreck has been sitting there, or how obviously abandoned it appears to be. The finder's keeper's instinct is understandable, especially for boaters who genuinely just stumbled onto something interesting while diving or beachcombing. But many of these sites are protected specifically because of their historical or archaeological value, and unauthorized recovery, even well-intentioned recovery, can damage the site or violate laws designed to preserve it for study and public benefit rather than private collection. If you're diving or exploring an area with any known historical significance, whether that's a documented wreck or simply water near a historic port, it's worth understanding what protections might apply before you bring anything up, rather than assuming that whatever you find is automatically yours to keep. Most of these items aren't illegal because someone is trying to trap boaters. They're illegal because they protect wildlife, historical sites, the environment, or the people sharing the water with you. Spend 10 minutes checking the rules before your next trip, and you could save yourself hundreds or even thousands of dollars in fines. If this video saved you from even one expensive mistake, hit the like button, subscribe to Boat Hunter, and turn on notifications. It tells YouTube to show this video to more boat owners who probably need to see it too. I'm Boat Hunter. If you enjoy practical boating advice, hidden gems, and smart buying guides, subscribe for more videos every week.